Hello and welcome to Ipswich Play School's guidance on what food to pack for your DofE. This is something that the pupils often get really quite wrong in terms of the right kind of combination of carbohydrates, calories, and in terms of bringing foods that just take up too much space in the bag. So this is sort of your comprehensive guide to how to pack the DofE. This is in no way the only kind of way you can pack. It's just a good sort of base. Certainly for those starting out on their DofE journey in terms of what kind of foods they can pack and how to pack them as well. I would emphasise, much like the packing of the kit and the purchasing of the kit, to parents, please do this with your children. If you do it without them, if you do it for them, then of course they will learn nothing. And if you give it to them and give them the entire responsibility themselves, there's a very good chance that I may have to end up picking up the pieces because they don't always get it perfectly right, because of course it's a learning journey for them, and that's what we're here for, to help guide them on that journey. Starting off then, much like with your main kit, these are your best friends, your Ziploc freezer bags. A big one for putting everything in terms of all of your food, so that it's in one place. That's a good friend of yours, and lots of little smaller ones again, Ziploc ones that can seal at the top, and we can really minimise the amount of space that's taken up in our bags using those, and also keep everything compact, and if it gets wet, the food won't get wet, so that's a really good thing to start off with. I'm going to go in reverse order, as it were, so I'm going to start off with dinner, and then lunch, and then move on to breakfast. So dinner is usually the biggest meal. They've done a big walk, a long day, and they need to be ready for a decent meal, preferably 2 courses realistically with a drink as well. This is the go-to. You've got 2 types really. It's a boil in the bag or a freeze dried. You can get these online on the food list that I've given you at the end page. There's lots and lots of links to quite a range of different main meals, desserts and breakfasts in fact. There's 2 types. There is freeze-dried, much like this one here. This is custard with apple. And then there is boil in the bag. Freeze-dried, you just zip off the top, pour some boiling water in from your stove, and then wait a few minutes, and then it is ready to go. The boil in the bag is much like the name suggests. You pop the bag in the water, you wait for a few minutes, and then it will be ready. The difference ultimately is in 2 forms. 1, weight, and 2, taste. The boil in the bags, not this one, this one's the freeze dried. The boil in the bags tend to weigh more because they have not been have had all the water taken out of them, but they do tend to taste much nicer. Surprisingly good, I would say. I think there's been a lot of research gone into this, and there's a big competitive market out there for boil in the bag meals. And the boil in the bags are pretty good, pretty tasty. Certainly good for bronze and silver because you're only camping for 1 or 2 nights with those, and the boil in the bags are certainly not too much weight. So a couple of those, 1 for main meal, 1 for pudding, is a really good standard go-to. You absolutely don't need to do that, of course, but it's a good go-to. Freeze-dried, not as tasty, half the weight. So if weight is a genuine concern of yours, then go for the freeze-dried. Not bad, I would say, in the taste department. Certainly not an IPS lunch standard, but not bad all the same. So they're sort of the go-to for lots of our pupils, boil in the bag or freeze-dried. Of course, there's very little mess. There's a bit of wastage, so we need to make sure that we recycle the packets at the end, but there's not so much mess. The next go-to for lots of our pupils is pasta. Often they do this as a group. The big thing I'd say about pasta is try and go for the smaller pasta. So sort of much smaller pieces of pasta rather than the big open ones. Orzo pasta, looks like rice, is sort of the gold standard, the Bear Grylls standard of pasta. This is enough to feed probably 5 people because there's just no lost air there. It's not going to take up much space in their bag, and it's a really good thing to have with you. So Orzo pasta is the best pasta to have in terms of space to weight ratio, but otherwise try and avoid the big farfalle or the big pastas as well. So a good pasta. The sauces need to come in plastic packets. There's absolutely hundreds of these available in every supermarket, from your basic pesto to quite fancy range, but not a jar. Jars and tins are an absolute no-no in their kit bag for what are hopefully obvious reasons, but a plastic packet of sauce is something that they can have. Of course, you can get quite creative with your food. You could make something, pop it in a freeze bag and freeze it. You could go very, very fancy. I know I do for the staff that come on DofE, but it's up to you. Maybe you want to start simple. Easy things, and these are good for lunch and for dinner actually, are these packets of lentils, rice, a variety of beans. There's lots and lots of these packets that you get from any supermarket really, and these are great in that you can just pop the whole bag in and warm it through. You don't need to take it out and heat it up, but also you can eat these cold. So these actually belong in both the dinner range and the lunch range. You can just pop the top off and with your spork or your fork just eat it as part of your lunch. So these are a really good go-to as well. Again, there's a link to a really good range of these on the food kit list. So these are an absolute staple that a lot of our pupils do. I'll put that in the lunch one for now. Noodles. Now, for some reason, I remember my university days, the pupils are into pot noodles all alike. Now, that's fine. Pot noodles don't carry many calories realistically, so they probably need at least 2 if they're going to be having these, but this is almost all just empty space. If they put 4 or 5 of these in their bag, A, they're going to crush and probably spill over the bag, but B, they are just taking up lots and lots of space and they're going to struggle to fit everything in their bag if they do that. So we simply open it up. If this is a pot noodle or whatever it is, we give it a crush, so crush it down a little bit, and then we get a freezer bag. And we can probably get a few of these in there, and we pop it in our freezer bag. Give it a bit more crush as well. And you can see straight away from this to just this tiny amount here, this is something that we can carry in our bag. We can roll it up, and we seal it up, and we've got this tiny, tiny amount of space that's also a lot safer in terms of moving around in the bag. This will crush, this will break, and this will not. And of course, when we're on DofE, it's very hard for them to recycle these, and the pupils tend to just throw them straight in the bin. When you're at home, you can take this and you can pop it in the recycling bin. These bags, of course, can be reused. So that's a really good thing in terms of if you're desperate to bring your pot noodles. Other noodles, so for example, super noodles, you can bring them in these bags. Again, these can be crushed down and popped into a bag like that. These are almost all just empty space, just air. So these can be broken down and put in these freezer bags. And they can label them. They can get pens and they can write on these bags, dinner 1, dinner 2, and they know exactly what it is. Please let them do that with you rather than them doing it themselves. Hot dogs, or you can get the vegetarian and vegan equivalent of these. These are pretty good for a whole group. Certainly if you bring these for yourselves, if you bring a pack of 10 hot dogs entirely for yourself, that's A, a bit greedy, and B, you're possibly going to have a stomachache at the end of the night. But if you're organising dinner as a group, you may well decide to bring some pasta, some hot dogs, and some sauce, a decent amount of pasta. Of course, this is too small for a group, and that you can cook that for all of you for one evening. So that's really not a bad starting point if you want to make yourself some dinner. These will last. They do keep in the fridge, but they will last a good sort of 3 days out of the fridge. I would say try and avoid the chicken ones for obvious reasons, but I'm sure they're pretty good all the same. So a good hot dog is not a bad idea for meals. McDonald's or any kind of little ketchups or barbecue sauces, these are quite nice little things if the pupils want to sort of have a little bit of extra flavour with their food. Not a bad idea, but again, small. They're not going to bring a bottle of ketchup with their breakfast, for example. And a treat. Nice little treat. Maybe you can pop this in the bag secretly for them. Just something like a bar of chocolate. This is a salted caramel marshmallow spoon. They pop it in the pot and then just add some hot water, and they've got themselves a nice hot chocolate at the end of the evening. Quite a nice thing for them to have if in fact you want to treat them. Okay, moving on to lunch then. So lunch comes with a variety of things. First of all, please don't give them sandwiches. You can give them sandwiches on the first day if you want to, but I think the whole idea is for them to experience a different way of doing things. Wraps or pita breads are the absolute go-to in terms of bread. If you pack them a French stick, for example, and yes, of course, we've had that in the past, it's just going to get crushed down in their bag, or if it rains, it's just going to get ruined. These come in a resealable bag. If it doesn't, of course, you've got the freezer bags, and you can just sort of take out 1 or 2 of these and pop some things in there, wrap it up, and you eat it. In terms of the kind of things that you could pop inside, cheeses, Dairy seems to never go off. I'll let you work out why. Worryingly, this has an enormous shelf life and will keep for many, many days in their bags. Keep it in the cardboard container, just a little bit of protection so it doesn't sort of pop open. Something like baby bells, really, really good. They'll need to keep the wax. They can't just, they need to keep the wax in a bin bag, which I'll go through in a second at the end. But really, really good thing. They're sort of self-protected, self-preserved, so they're a good cheese that you can pop in there. So they can sort of break a few of those into the wrap while they're there. Maybe add some salami. Here I've got pepperami for my sins, but if you can get a better salami, they just didn't have one in the shop when I went to. And they can break it up, put that in the wrap, roll it up, and then they've made themselves a meal rather than eating the sandwiches their parents have made for them. So that's a really nice thing for them to do. And they can do that as and when. It doesn't need to be made beforehand. Whilst they stop for lunch, they can just get these things out, find themselves a dry spot, and make themselves some lunch there. Quite straightforward, rather good. Something like a Cornish pasty, fine. For day one only. I really wouldn't want to see what this looks like after a couple of days crushed in a rucksack in the heat. But if you want one of these for day one, that's absolutely fine. In terms of fruit, again, fruit and vegetables really, they're for day one only really. So something like this, they need to keep that somewhere safe. If they do want to bring fresh fruit, that's absolutely fine. Again, they need to take the waste with them. And in terms of putting in a bigger bag of vegetables, sort of carrot sticks or beans or sugar snaps or mange too is a really good thing to have in a freezer bag for them to just sort of nibble on as they go along. Something like malt loaf, fantastically great in terms of calorie input, great in terms of giving them energy, slow release energy. Sweets and Lucozade tablets, really not something they need. It's going to give them a big boost of energy for a short period of time, and then bang, they're going to sort of drop their energy load pretty quickly. Things like dried mango is really good, but again, we're going to want to take the dried mango out, as with lots of these things, and we're going to want to put it into a freezer bag. Otherwise, once they've opened this bag, unless they are resealable bags, once they've opened it, they're not going to be able to, it's going to be open for the rest of the trip. So the dried mango in a little freezer bag, roll it up, zip it up, and you've got it there. Equally, things like biltong, jerky, they come in, again, big bags. Again, you'll realise there's not that much in there. Once they put that into a freezer bag, it really is quite a small amount. But these, again, keep for a very long period of time. One thing I would say is, in these, when you have meat packages, or even you've got the vegan equivalent, they often have a little packet that keeps the meat, keeps the moisture off the meat. Keep that in the freezer bag if you're decanting it to a freezer bag. Don't take that out and throw it away, because it does have a purpose. These sort of snacks, snack bars, they're very good for sort of breakfast or lunch. They can just sort of have them as and when. A range of these is fine. And then if they want to make themselves a thing called a trail mix, this is an absolute go-to. All of our goals have quite a range of trail mixes, and they get quite excited about making them, I will say. So I'm going to make an absolute basic trail mix. I've got to start here. I've got a few raisins, and I am going to add some nuts because I have spoken to the people in my group and none of them have a nut allergy at all. So I'm okay to pack myself a few nuts. I'm going to pop a few sweets in there. Not overdo it, just a few sweets as a treat. And then I could add some pretzels. I could add some dried fruit. I mix it all up, and this is literally in my pocket as I'm walking, and it's something I nibble on as I go through the day. When the pupils sort of work their way through the awards, they like having almost a competition in terms of who can have the most extravagant trail mix, which is what that is. In a freezer bag, nibbling it as and when. It really just keeps them going as they're burning lots and lots of calories throughout the day. So that's sort of lunch sorted. Moving on to breakfast. They have to have something warm for dinner, and they have to have something warm for breakfast. It could be that they just choose to have a cold breakfast, and then they have a hot drink or something like that. So the basics of breakfast. So again, in my freezer bag, I could have some tea, a hot chocolate, which is pretty much a staple for a lot of our pupils, a coffee, if they're mature, ahead of their time. Pop those in a freezer bag, they can take them out and they can make them as part of their breakfast. We have porridge. Now, porridge really should, lots of people are bringing the porridge in pots like that, porridge pots. Again, not a good idea. They crack, they get all over the food, and they are just a massive, all over the things in the bag. It's a massive, massive waste of space. So really, these are an absolute no-no. If you buy these, or you've bought these, absolutely fine. Crush them, we don't need to crush them down, put them straight into a freezer bag, right on it, breakfast, and there you go. With these things, all they do, as with the pot noodles or the porridge, they just take however much they want, they pour it into a bowl, the bowl that they have with them, the plastic or metal bowl, and then they add the hot water, and then they can just reseal this, and they've got it for the next morning if they're on silver or gold. So this is something that would last quite a few days. If you've bought these sort of 5-minute oats, that's absolutely fine. For each of these, if you want to, you can add a bit of milk powder, you can add some raisins, you can add some sort of chocolate sprinkles, some milk duds as they were. Just again, make it quite exciting for them. Add a sprinkle of cinnamon. Again, if you do it with your children, again, it can get quite exciting. You get, it's making it theirs a bit more. If you have these are fine. What I would say, these are the sachets that you just pop in the microwave with a little bit of milk or water. These are fine. They're quite dry if you just do it with water, so maybe a bit of milk powder is not a bad idea. I would recommend taking these out and popping them into freezer bags. Again, because you can recycle the packets, but sometimes if these somehow get wet, the bags just becomes a big mush. Essentially, this whole thing becomes one solid lump, and the porridge is pretty much inedible at that point. So, in the freezer bags is an absolute go-to. A lot of people like these chocolate-filled crepes. Now, these are fine as a snack. A lot of people arrive with sort of 3 of these, and that is their breakfast. I would just say, so these are children who are about to go on a approximately 8-hour walk, and you can see how thin they are. There's just nothing in there. These are probably less than 100 calories each, and they have a couple of these and a cup of hot chocolate, and then they go for a big walk with a heavy rucksack. They just are not going to cope. There's just not enough food in there. So if they have them as a snack, that's fine, but this whole thing, even if they were to eat all 6, they would struggle beyond sort of the first hour or 2. So these are sort of something to go with their breakfast rather than anything else. And then of course we go back to our old favourite. This of course is the same apple and custard one we had before, but you've got all-day breakfasts in these. There's an almost concerning range of different things. You can have scrambled eggs with cheese, you can have, there's ones with smoked salmon in, I believe. Some people just prefer a nice pot of noodles for breakfast. That's absolutely fine. But again, the boil in the bag, for lots of our pupils, for breakfast as well, is quite a good go-to. Again, there's links to that on the kit list. Okay, so once I've decided what I'm going to have, I need 2 of these, ultimately. 2 of these. One is for any rubbish that I want to take with me. The bronzes are going to be in a campsite, so we're going to be in a place where there's lots of opportunities for rubbish. Silvers and golds, there's lots of wild camping, so they need to take their rubbish with them. Usually what they do is they allocate one person to have the rubbish bag. That's sort of their punishment for their sins, as it were, and they rotate around. So somebody takes it the first day, somebody takes it the second day, and we're just putting all our rubbish in the bag and making sure that we take it with us, and then of course when we get to a suitable location we can either throw it away or recycle it. The other one is of course for your food. We're choosing to put whatever food, we have our freezer bags and they go in our freezer bags, they're labelled, and we put our food into these bags. I'll put a few random things in there, as it were. They're labelled, they know what they are, the children are quite good about doing this once they've sort of gone beyond that point. That's they're going to be carrying with them. And then all of their food will go in one bag, it can be rolled up, zipped up, and that can go in the sort of top half of their bag. The reason it needs to be sort of near the top, 2 reasons. 1, we don't want to crush this too much, and 2, they need to access it for their lunch during the day while they're walking. So this is one of the last things they put in their bag. And that's it. Any questions, please email me and I will do what I can to answer them.